Hello, BookTube. October. So we have Halloween. We just had a trunk or treat, our ninth annual one here that the library holds. And I thought I'd tell you a story. This is a true story about something that happened to me when I was a little boy. Now, I grew up in southern Vermont. Very rural life. And the time would have been the 1960s. What exact year, I don't remember. I was born in the beginning of the 60s, and this would have been, obviously before I was 10 years old then. But I remember it still in great detail. So, we had, as a family, moved down with my Uncle Jim for the winter to Florida, in a place called St. Cloud. There was no Disney World then. It's right by Orlando. There was no big cities. I remember the one thing there was a rodeo, and my dad bought a cowboy hat for it. I think you got fined if you went, done in fun. A fine if you went into town without a cowboy hat or a shirt or boots or something. So we lived in a very old house in an orange orchard. An orange grove, excuse me. You can tell I'm from New England because apple orchard, orange grove, whatever. And I loved it. And there were snakes and frogs and all sorts of things a boy would love. Something that could get you. But we were down there for my dad to work with my Uncle Jim to do some roofing. My dad was a roofer when I was young. And we, at the end of the winter, Uncle Jim and my Aunt Edith came north, and then we came north, my family. So we were in I believe one of those, I don't remember what make it was, but it was like a station wagon, long and thin. I think probably had the wooden panel on the side, but I may be confusing it with another car we had. And there wasn't a lot of interstates then. There were some sections of interstate. So I believe, but I could be wrong, that we were on Route 1. And we're driving. My mom, who's Irish descent, has always been known as Faye in the family, as a description, not her name. Her name actually is a description. She's called Tiny, but that's not her name, because she is a little teeny person. And we started north. And on the way, as was not uncommon in those days, maybe common now for all I know, but it wasn't uncommon in those days, you sort of got to know the people that were traveling the way you were in other vehicles. You'd stop at a little, corner market or a gas station and started seeing the same people. And that's what happened to us. Now, we were traveling pretty late because my father wanted to get home. It was a 3-day drive about to get to where we were from Florida. And back then it may have been a little longer because there wasn't as much access to high-speed highways and all that. So, sure enough, we sort of made friends in a very loose sense of the word, but you got to know one other car. My mom and dad and 2 little girls. And they'd pass us and wave and be looking out the window. And my sisters and I would wave, be looking out the windows, and my father would wave or whatever, and my mom. And I think we were up in the Carolinas, and it was a dark, dark night. Creepy dark. Not a lot of street lamps and those sort of things. They wouldn't be on one of those old U.S. routes anyway. Occasional headlight coming the other way. And my mom is sitting in the front and the passenger side. My dad's just driving along. And I had my head up on the back of the front seat because you could do that in those days. I don't even know if we had seatbelts yet. We may have, but I don't know. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, these headlights started coming right for us, straight at us. And then this big truck. And my mother screamed, and I screamed. My sisters were asleep on the back seats. My father just about crapped himself because my father didn't see anything. And my mother and I were shaking and sweating. And my father was pissed. What the hell was that all about? You almost made me go off the road, you know. Rightfully so, because there was nothing there. But my mom was shook up. I was scared, but my mom was shook up. And my father was angry. Probably because he was scared. It probably scared him. I'm sure it did. Because he wasn't the kind of guy who was angry. He was not an angry guy, but he was angry. And we're getting ready, and there's this gas station, but it's closed. You know, you're coming out of the woods, and there's a gas station that sort of opens up a little bit. And it had sort of a little bit of a drop down into the gas station. So silly enough, I think it must have been the Carolinas or something, probably North Carolina. That's a guess. And we're starting to get, my dad puts on his blinker, and we're getting ready to turn, and the other family with the little girls and the mom and dad went by, and we could see them looking at us, and they were waving. My dad got us down in the gas station, and my mom got out, my dad got out. I did not get out, because I think they had words. And she told him what she saw, and he just was having nothing to do with it. So finally we get back into the car. He had calmed down, and my mom was settled down, and I think he thought we must have both been sleeping and reacted off each other. And we drove back up on the road. My sisters had woken up from the noise and commotion, but they went back to sleep. They were both really little then. And we got back on the road, and we started going. And we're going through, like I said, it's a very dark night. And all of a sudden, we see flashing lights. And I never forget, we had to slow down, and a big Mack truck was on top of the vehicle that the other family with the little girls was in. And there were police. A truck driver, a big old man, just covered in tears, just sobbing, and obviously everybody was dead. And my mother went white. I was just in shock because I'd never seen anything like it in my life. And my dad was pretty shook. And then we drove home. So if we hadn't screamed, if we hadn't thought we saw something, if we hadn't pulled off that road, we would have been the next car up. So that family story has been retold many, many times. And it's a true one.